Hi, I'm Katy Stokes. I'm a PhD student funded by the Medical Research Council Doctoral Training Partnership at the University of Warwick. I work within the Applied Biomedical Signal Processing and Intelligent eHealth Lab. This presentation covers the development of a machine learning model for automatic detection of pneumonia. The model is based on patient symptoms and signs. This is with a view to the creation of an easy-to-use diagnostic support tool. The group for this project consisted of myself, Rossana Castaldo and Leandro Pecchia in the ABSPI lab at Warwick University in the UK. The dataset used was collected and curated by Lejla Gobeta-Pokvic and Almir Badnovic in Bosnia and Herzegovina, who also supported the work presented here. So, to give some context, pneumonia has a devastating impact on global health, with the disease burden falling mostly in low and middle-income countries. Diagnosis of pneumonia is challenging, in part because many of the symptoms overlap with that of other respiratory diseases, which require different treatments. For example, as shown, bronchitis and pneumonia have differing underlying causes and should be approached in different ways. However, patients can experience very similar sets of symptoms for both diseases. Secondly, pneumonia can present in very different ways depending on the patient and their associated conditions. And lastly, diagnostic tests are not always easy to access, especially in limited resource settings. In particular, the gold standard is considered to be radiography, where the lungs can actually be imaged for the presence of these fluid pockets. However, this is relatively costly and does require a high level of expertise. The outbreak of COVID-19 has been a reminder of the significance of focusing on symptomatic diagnosis, highlighting the value of community screening in order to identify and further isolate cases. And ideally here the patient wouldn't need to be brought into contact with any healthcare workers or indeed into any healthcare facilities. So machine learning may be able to help overcome these difficulties in diagnosis and actually distinguish between very similar diseases. This is by detecting underlying patterns in data, which would be difficult to do manually and would also require extensive experience and expertise. Our aim was to investigate the feasibility of designing a machine learning model based on patient symptoms and signs. This model would ultimately be suitable for incorporation into an easy-to-use diagnostic tool. The dataset was collected in a middle-income country and contained patient information covering population characteristics, laboratory test results, and symptoms and signs. Information from 4,500 subjects was collected. 60% of those had a final diagnosis of pneumonia and 40% that of bronchitis. The criteria we set were that the model should be evidence-based and interpretable. For this, we used only the easily recognised symptoms and signs as predictors to build the model. Our second criteria was that the model be able to distinguish patients with bronchitis and pneumonia with a high accuracy. This work has now been published and all details of the methods are available. So just very briefly, the steps taken during the project are shown here on the right. After statistical analysis, backwards feature selection was applied to the symptoms and signs. We did this to ensure we built the simplest model, which was also the best performing. The data was then split into training and test sets. Models were trained using several different machine learning algorithms, and ultimately the performance of these was compared on the test dataset. So, as discussed, there are many challenges to diagnosing pneumonia and indeed distinguishing it from other respiratory diseases. Further, a machine learning model could assist in decision making, in particular in areas which lack specialised personnel and/or equipment. Our work will be of use to other researchers looking to develop diagnostic tools, and will also highlight important factors for decision makers selecting the best tools to implement. Our model could provide the groundwork from which a specific diagnostic tool could be developed. This would be of use to healthcare workers, especially those working in remote or resource-poor areas. Ultimately, the aim is to improve healthcare for patients by contributing towards accessible, fast, and more accurate diagnosis. I want to also highlight the benefits that explainable AI can provide over so-called black box approaches. An interpretable model is one which can be fully understood. This allows any risks or biases to be assessed, and this gives further trust and confidence in the system. So on to our results now. From our candidate features, we found 6 clinically relevant symptoms to be the best predictors of pneumonia in this dataset. Interestingly, we found no improvement in performance when adding laboratory test results to the list of predictors. So in all, 3 models were trained, tested and compared. These were a decision tree, a linear support vector machine, and a logistic regression model. These models were chosen as they represent the algorithms most often employed for similar problems in the literature, and they also present a range of levels of interpretability for comparison. Logistic regression is considered the simplest model, and support vector machine is a method which we found commonly employed, but in itself it is not interpretable. I also want to note that in order to evaluate the impact of the unbalanced dataset we were using, a random subset of patients was used to create a smaller balanced dataset. This again was split for training and testing. We saw that all our models showed no significant change in performance between the imbalanced and balanced datasets, and this was taken as an indicator of their good robustness. The best performing model was taken to be the decision tree, which has the benefit of explainability in the classification and also had the highest sensitivity. This may be favoured over specificity in detecting cases of pneumonia, especially which could become severe. On the right shows the receiver operator characteristic curve for the decision tree model. This highlights the trade-off between sensitivity and specificity, with best performing models found in the top left corner of the plot. So this initial work opens up many possibilities. First, and importantly, is to validate the model on other data sources. This will ensure that the model is suitably generalizable and performs well not only on this data. This is particularly relevant as it's known that environmental conditions play a role in development and presentation of pneumonia, and these may differ quite a lot depending on the region where the data is collected. In particular, we wish to seek data from low-income countries where the disease burden from pneumonia is highest. Subsequently, the model can be used to design a user-friendly decision support tool, capable of taking symptoms as inputs and outputting the suggested disease condition. An improvement of the model could be to expand to other frequently presenting respiratory diseases. This would allow for a more versatile screening tool. It would also be very valuable to explore the possibility of detecting the underlying cause, such as whether a case is bacterial or viral pneumonia. This information wasn't present in this dataset, however would be extremely useful in motivating treatment options. Lastly, other improvements in performance may be possible through incorporating readings from cheap and widely available sensors, such as a microphone in a smartphone. And as these technologies progress, this will become more feasible. In this way, we aim to contribute towards Sustainable Development Goal 3, good health and well-being for all. Thank you for your attention.